The morning sun lifted slowly over Dubai, stretching its golden rays across a city built by dreams, determination, and the relentless will of its leaders. But as the city woke, another kind of awakening was happening within the heart of the young prince. Hamdan bin Muhammad al-Maktoum, known to the world as Fazza. His journey from a quiet, observant boy to a young leader with a vision had already begun, but the true transformation, one that would test his endurance, discipline, and the very core of his character, was just starting to unfold. Even after becoming crown prince, he never allowed comfort to dull his edge. Titles meant responsibility, not rest. So, long before most people even opened their eyes, Hamdan was already at the stables. The crisp morning air brushed against his face as he tightened the saddle on his horse. The trainers offered assistance, but he declined with a warm smile. "If I can't saddle my own horse," he would say, "how can I carry a nation?" With every ride into the quiet desert, Fazza felt more connected to himself. The endless horizons reminded him that leadership is not a destination. It is a continuous journey. The world saw a prince, but in these silent hours, he felt like just a man, searching for clarity amid swirling sands and vast skies. His father, Sheikh Muhammad, silently observed this discipline. He never intervened, never controlled Hamdan's routines, never imposed his expectations. Instead, he allowed Fazza to shape himself, to build strength from struggle, humility from service, and wisdom from experience. Yet leadership is not taught in books or stables alone. It is learned in moments that break you, rebuild you, and stretch you beyond who you think you are. One such moment arrived when Dubai faced a sudden economic downturn. Fazza was still young in his position. Too young, critics said, to handle crisis on such a scale. The pressure weighed on him heavier than any saddle, any title, any expectation he had carried before. He felt it the way a rider feels a storm before it hits. In the air, in the silence, in the tightening of his chest. But instead of retreating into the palace like many expected, he did the opposite. He went to the streets, visited workers, listened to merchants, sat with young entrepreneurs who feared losing everything. He shook their hands, asked their stories, heard their fears. Many were shocked. A crown prince walking through markets, talking like a friend, not a ruler. That night he couldn't sleep. The voices of the people echoed in his mind. Their trust in him, their hope, their fear. He realized something profound. A leader doesn't carry the crown. He carries the weight of every heart that believes in him. The next morning he called an urgent council meeting. Advisors filled the room, surprised to see him so calm and centered. His father watched quietly, letting him lead. Fazza presented a plan not only strategic but deeply human. He proposed new initiatives to support small businesses, stabilize the market, expand jobs, and protect workers who had families depending on them. When he finished, the room was silent. Then, slowly, his father nodded. "This," he said, "is leadership with a soul." But Fazza's journey was far from smooth. Leadership demanded sacrifice of privacy, comfort, sleep, and sometimes even happiness. He often stayed awake long past midnight, reading reports, writing notes, analyzing future risks. At times, he questioned whether he was enough, strong enough, wise enough, resilient enough. But every doubt pushed him to improve. Whenever uncertainty threatened to overwhelm him, he returned to the desert. There, among the dunes, he would remember who he truly was. Not a prince born into comfort, but a boy forged by discipline, shaped by experience, and guided by the timeless wisdom of the land. He also turned to poetry during these difficult times. His heart poured into verses that spoke of love, loss, destiny, and the silent battles every human faces. Poetry became his emotional release, a place where he didn't have to be the prince, the leader, the symbol. He could simply be Fazza, honest, vulnerable, raw. One night, alone under the moonlight, he wrote, "The crown is not a jewel I wear. It is a promise I carry. A promise to rise when others fall, to guide when others are lost, to serve when others seek power." These words would later become some of his most famous lines, resonating with millions who admired him not just for his position, but for the heart behind it. But leadership is never a straight road. It twists, tests, tears you down before building you up again. A major crisis struck when a massive fire broke out in an industrial area. The news spread across Dubai like a wave of fear. Instead of watching from a distance, Fazza rushed to the scene. The smoke, the chaos, the heat, it didn't stop him. Without hesitation, he joined the rescue teams, helping people evacuate, guiding them to safety, and offering words of comfort. A firefighter later said, "He was not standing behind us. He was standing with us." But Fazza's journey was far from smooth. Leadership demanded sacrifice of privacy, comfort, sleep, and sometimes even happiness. He often stayed awake long past midnight, reading reports, writing notes, analyzing future risks. At times, he questioned whether he was enough, strong enough, wise enough, resilient enough. But every doubt pushed him to improve. Whenever uncertainty threatened to overwhelm him, he returned to the desert. There, among the dunes, he would remember who he truly was. Not a prince born into comfort, but a boy forged by discipline, shaped by experience, and guided by the timeless wisdom of the land. He also turned to poetry during these difficult times. His heart poured into verses that spoke of love, loss, destiny, and the silent battles every human faces. Poetry became his emotional release, a place where he didn't have to be the prince, the leader, the symbol. He could simply be Fazza, honest, vulnerable, raw. One night, alone under the moonlight, he wrote, "The crown is not a jewel I wear. It is a promise I carry. A promise to rise when others fall, to guide when others are lost, to serve when others seek power." These words would later become some of his most famous lines, resonating with millions who admired him not just for his position, but for the heart behind it. But leadership is never a straight road. It twists, tests, tears you down before building you up again. A major crisis struck when a massive fire broke out in an industrial area. The news spread across Dubai like a wave of fear. Instead of watching from a distance, Fazza rushed to the scene. The smoke, the chaos, the heat, it didn't stop him. Without hesitation, he joined the rescue teams, helping people evacuate, guiding them to safety, and offering words of comfort. A firefighter later said, "He was not standing behind us. He was standing with us." Another crisis came when floods hit an area after unusual heavy rainfall. Fazza rode through the water on horseback to reach stranded families. He handed children bottles of water, covered elderly people with his own jacket, and carried a young boy from a collapsing house. Cameras captured these moments, but he never wanted praise. "I am not doing this for the world to see," he told the media. "I am doing it because these people are my people." His compassion became the backbone of his leadership. His bravery became its shield. His humility became its soul. Yet even with his growing responsibilities, Fazza never lost touch with the younger generation. He visited schools unannounced, surprising students, sitting with them, asking about their dreams. He told them, "Your ideas will build the next Dubai. Don't wait for permission to dream big." He saw potential in every child, every worker, every dreamer. He believed Dubai's future would be shaped not by power, but by imagination. Around this time, he began advocating for innovation, technology, artificial intelligence, environmental reform, and youth leadership. His speeches ignited a spark across the UAE, pushing thousands to pursue entrepreneurship, creativity, and new possibilities. But ambition is heavy, and the world doesn't slow down for a leader, even a good one. There were nights he felt overwhelmed, nights when he doubted every decision, nights when loneliness, the kind only high positions know, wrapped itself around him like a cold shadow. But he endured. He always endured. Because every morning, before the world woke, before the city stirred, he returned to the stables. Back to the simple rhythm that grounded him. Back to the horse that understood him better than most people did. Back to the desert that never judged him, never pressured him, never asked him to be anything other than himself. The desert didn't care that he was a prince. The horse didn't care that he was a leader. The wind didn't care that he was Fazza. Out there, he was just Hamdan, finding peace in movement, silence, and breath. As the years passed, his leadership matured. His decisions grew sharper. His heart grew stronger. His vision expanded. And slowly, unshakably, undeniably, he was becoming the kind of leader his father had always hoped for. Not a copy, but a legacy of his own. This is the rise of a prince not defined by wealth, but by willpower. Not shaped by privilege, but by purpose. Not crowned by birth, but crowned by his people's love. And this, his inner transformation, his struggles, his victories, his emotional journey, is only the beginning. As the weight of the crown settled onto Fazza's shoulders, he realized that leadership was not a moment. It was a lifetime. Dubai was growing faster than any desert city in history, stretching its arms toward the sky with towers of glass and steel, but greatness came with challenges. And while the world looked at Dubai and saw miracles, Fazza saw the hidden struggles beneath the shine. The silent sacrifices of workers, the sleepless nights of planners, the difficult decisions that shaped a nation's heartbeat. He learned early that a leader must see what others overlook, hear what others ignore, and feel what others hide. The young prince who once whispered "one more time" to his horse now whispered the same to himself every morning. His days began before sunrise. The world still slept while Fazza studied reports, reviewed plans, checked construction blueprints, and met with teams whose work would shape Dubai's next decade. But work was not just inside offices. Every week, without announcing it to the public, he would disguise himself and walk among the people. Visiting labor camps, beaches, markets, metro stations, cafes, and the quiet corners of the city where no one expected a prince to appear. He watched, he listened, he learned. He collected their stories like treasures, because he believed a city is not built from stone but from its people. One night, he stood quietly near a construction site where workers labored under floodlights. Some were exhausted, some homesick, some carrying silent burdens. Their foreman, not recognizing him, spoke harshly to a young worker who made a mistake. The boy, barely in his 20s, looked down but didn't argue. Fazza stepped forward, calm but firm, and asked, "Why are you speaking to him like this?" The foreman frowned. "Who are you to ask?" Fazza removed the scarf from his face. Silence fell like thunder. The foreman froze. The workers stared in disbelief. Fazza walked to the young worker, placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, and said, "This city rises because of people like you. Don't let anyone make you feel small." That moment traveled through the hearts of the workers like a fire of hope. That worker wrote a letter home that night. "Dubai is led by a man who sees us." But Fazza's journey was not only about compassion. It was about pressure. Pressure so heavy that even the desert wind could not carry it away. Behind closed doors, he navigated global politics, economic storms, and the endless expectations of a world always watching. Some nights, the weight was so great that he could not sleep at all. Yet he never complained, never hesitated, never stepped back. His endurance training, once meant for horse racing, had now evolved into mental endurance, leadership of the mind, heart, and soul. During this time, poetry remained his only escape. At midnight, when the city lights dimmed and silence settled like a soft blanket, Fazza sat by his window with a notebook. His poems reflected his internal battles: uncertainty, fear of failing his people, longing for peace, and the quiet wish for a simple life he could never have. One night he wrote, "A crown is made of light, but it weighs like stone." That line became famous years later, but at the time it was just a whisper from a young man trapped between duty and desire. Travel also shaped him. He visited countries facing poverty, crisis, and conflict. He met children who played barefoot in muddy streets, mothers who stood in food lines, old men who had lost everything. These journeys carved compassion deeper into him. They taught him that leadership was not about building the tallest tower, but about lifting the lowest soul. When he returned to Dubai, he started programs for housing, education, health, and sports for all ages and incomes. He made it his mission that every child, Emirati or expat, felt like they belonged to the Dubai dream. With time, his leadership style became unique, gentle yet unbreakable. He listened before he judged. He acted before he spoke. He solved problems before they grew. People called him the People's Prince, a leader who did not hide behind palace walls. He rode bicycles with the people, trained with soldiers, visited hospitals without cameras, helped fishermen pull nets from the sea, and often stopped to speak to children who recognized him from afar. But with growth came storms. Dubai faced an economic crisis that threatened years of progress. Investors panicked. Markets trembled. Projects paused. Rumors spread like wildfire. This was one of the darkest nights in Dubai's modern history. Fazza, still young but fiercely determined, took command. He worked day and night with advisors, economists, engineers, and global partners. He refused to let fear spread. In one defining meeting, when a group of businessmen predicted collapse, Fazza stood, calm but intense, and said, "Dubai was built by the brave. Fear has no place here." His confidence became the flame that reignited courage in others. Months of hard work followed. New strategies were built. Old plans were restructured. And slowly, like a phoenix of sand and steel, Dubai rose again. This victory became one of the turning points of Fazza's life. It proved that he wasn't just a royal, he was a leader forged by fire. But leadership also shaped his personal life. He sacrificed friendships, sleep, and endless simple joys that ordinary people take for granted. There were moments when he stood on a balcony overlooking the glowing city and wondered how different his life could have been if he were not born into destiny. Yet every time doubt touched his heart, he remembered his father's words, "You don't have to become me. You must become the best version of you." This phrase followed him like a shadow, pushing him forward during difficult nights. His physical training also intensified: horseback endurance, mountain hikes, freediving, skydiving, and long-distance cycling. He wanted his body to be as strong as his mind so he could face any test. His friends sometimes joked, "You train like Dubai depends on it." He would smile softly and reply, "It does." As Fazza entered his 30s, Dubai entered a golden era. New towers pierced the sky. New communities flourished. Technology transformed life, and the world began calling Dubai a city of the future. Fazza encouraged innovation, supporting young entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, and dreamers. He believed dreams were seeds, and Dubai should be the soil that helped them grow. Yet with all the success, he never forgot the desert. Whenever pressure became too heavy, Fazza returned to the dunes. He walked alone, letting the wind carry away his worries. He would close his eyes, breathe deeply, and remind himself of the boy he once was, the boy who rode horses before dawn, the boy who believed that greatness required falling 100 times and rising 101. One night, while sitting atop a dune under the silent sky, a thought struck him, a realization that would define the rest of his life. A leader does not rise above his people. He rises among them. And in that moment, he understood why destiny chose him. Not because he was a prince, not because he was wealthy, not because he was educated, but because he felt the world deeply. He cared fiercely, he loved sincerely, and he carried pain with grace. As he walked back toward the city lights, the desert behind him and the future ahead, Fazza felt something he had never felt before. Not the weight of responsibility, but the strength to carry it. The young boy who once ran barefoot in the desert was now a man guiding millions. And though the world saw power in his hands, he saw purpose in his heart. His journey was far from over. Greatness was still calling, and Fazza was still rising.